By the time the central bank, this begs the question of how the UN will force the average person to adopt an actual digital ID after their respective governments finish rolling them out in 2025. By now, you'll know that the only way is to create a crisis which requires the use of digital ID, which therefore begs the question of what's coming. My bets are on the upcoming energy crisis, the upcoming food crisis, and the upcoming financial crisis. This is because some countries, such as Iran, have already started using digital ID to allocate food rations. It will not surprise me at all if we start to see the same in other countries for both food and energy. Now, I must stress that this is all speculation, and I'll reiterate that there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that any of these crises were premeditated. Let me repeat, absolutely no evidence, and don't you go looking for any. Contrary to what the conspiracy theorists claim, the truth will not set you free. In all seriousness, it's more than likely that the adoption of digital ID will be driven by some form of emergency stimulus. It's more than likely that this stimulus will come in the form of a CBDC because the central banks need to test them on a smaller scale the same way the governments did with their digital IDs. If I had my tinfoil hat, I'd tell you that the actual financial crisis can't be allowed to happen until the central banks have tested their CBDCs. That's because a financial crisis would be the ideal way to force the average person to adopt CBDCs, and it would be very unwise to do this when a CBDC is brand new. If my tinfoil hat is receiving the correct signals, so to speak, a financial crisis won't come until the second half of the decade, when most central banks feel comfortable with their CBDCs. This doesn't mean we couldn't see some economic crash between now and then, but I reckon there's room for one more multi-year zero-interest rate rally. Fortunately, there is a silver lining to my tinfoil hat. That's that by the time the central banks have finished rolling out their CBDCs, cryptocurrency will have likely developed to a point that it's become a viable alternative to the current system. This will provide a way out for the people who want freedom. The availability of this alternative will inevitably result in a split in the system, which could run both within and between borders. One system would be controlled from the top down by the elites at the UN, and the other system would be controlled from the bottom up by the average person. What happens after that is anyone's guess, but the UN's SDG-driven digital ID push has made one thing abundantly clear. The people in power are desperately trying not to lose control. As cliched as it sounds, that's really what this is all about. The people in power trying to maintain that power by any means. The tragedy is that things like war, corruption, wealth inequality, and climate change could all be easily fixed if they just gave up their ability to print money using central banks and other means. If you don't believe me, check out our video about that. It will be in the description. Now, the problem with eliminating the ability to print money at will is that this would require the people in power to give up their positions, and this is something they refuse to do. Instead, they're trying to force everyone else to exist within their increasingly centralized and corrupt power structures. And you know what? That's fine by me. I truly believe that the average person will soon be able to create their own power structures using cryptocurrency. These power structures will be much stronger than those constructed by the elites because there will always be more of us than there are of them. It's basic economics and it's inevitable.